Hi there, guys, and welcome to this week's edition of the Weiss Sunday Special with me, your host, Chris Coney. My guest analyst today is Juan Villaverde, and the macroeconomic topic we are going to be discussing today is Layer 2 scaling and the macroeconomic impact. So, Juan, can you start us off here with this topic? Can you give us a brief summary of what we mean by Layer 2 scaling and what are the potential macroeconomic impacts for the crypto space?
Okay, so by layer 2 scaling, we mean essentially, even though there's many technologies, they all try to do the same thing, which is to push transactions off of the main blockchain. Now, there's many ways to accomplish this. One of the most famous ways is the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which many people may have heard of by now. And I believe it is the first major layer 2 solution to come to market, which was in early 2018. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think the big hype about Lightning was Q1 2018 or Q2. I remember following the chart there. And the whole point there is basically you and I, Chris, can do a lot of transactions on using Bitcoin without writing those transactions on the main Bitcoin blockchain. The only thing we're going to use the blockchain for is a summary of our transactions. So let's say we do like the classic example is a bar tab. You're the bartender. I'm drinking beer. I know that I'm going to be sending money to you in very small quantities. So I will open up a channel. That's what it's called with you. So we're going to do this. We're going to agree that our Bitcoin transactions will not be recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain until we're done with our interaction. So I'm going to start drinking beer, and after 10:15, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to get an Uber. And then we close the tab and we do a summary of all those transactions, and we record that summary on the Bitcoin blockchain. So the end result is, instead of having these 15 individual transactions, each of them paying a fee on Bitcoin, it's only going to be one.
Right.
That's what we mean by layer 2. It's different ways of doing a bunch of transactions, pushing them elsewhere, off chain, we call it. And then we do a summary. We write a summary of these transactions using cryptography, obviously, on the main blockchain. And the reason for that is because classic blockchains are extremely expensive, and they're getting more expensive as more people are using them. So how do we fix this? You can't just say it's because these are decentralized systems. It's not as easy to just say, well, let's just expand capacity. Well, what do we mean by that? We can't actually change the core fundamentals of the blockchain, because blockchains are immutable. And part of that means you can't just upgrade them. So typically what you do is you keep everything as is on layer 1, that will be the blockchain, and we start experimenting with cool different solutions on layer 2. That's a separate thing. And the only thing we need to figure out is, okay, how do these two interact? We're going to do all these transactions. We're going to do them over here. We're not going to use the blockchain, but how do we write them back into the blockchain in a way that is secure? And that's where the different solutions come into play.
Right. That was the whole friction between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, right? In the Bitcoin Cash world, the belief system is just do everything on the base layer. And in the Bitcoin world, the BTC world, it's like, well, let's keep the base layer pretty standard, pretty secure, simple, safe, concise, and then let's build a special second layer for smaller transactions, faster transactions. So in Bitcoin, it becomes BTC network, Lightning network. And actually, I think this, for people who already understand how the internet works, it's the same paradigm shift the internet went through. The internet's actually in 4 different layers of technologies. The IP layer, internet protocol, that's like akin to the blockchain right now, right? But in order to get to this here, streaming video, you can't do that at the base layer, right? There are other layers of technology on top of the internet protocol that allow things like high frequency data, video streaming, big downloads, broadband, and all that kind of thing. So the blockchain, in the way you describe it, like second layer, maybe there'll be such a thing as third or fourth layer scaling solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that actually we're discussing that this morning with a group of analysts.
Okay,
there's going to be several layers. It's not going to just be layer 2. You're probably going to have eventually going to saturate this second layer, whatever that ends up being called. And then we're going to have layer 2 and layer 2, which technically is a third layer, fourth, fifth, very difficult to predict, but we know it's going. And I'm glad you mentioned the Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin thing, because that actually proves the point. You cannot just upgrade the base layer, the blockchain. You can't. You can try, but you're not going to convince everyone. And if you can't convince everyone, you end up with a split and conflict and uncertainty. So it's better not to go there. It's better to just say, okay, let's just build this thing in parallel. Let's connect it to the main to layer one without changing anything there, so that we don't go into any debates and philosophical debates about what Bitcoin should or should not be. Let's keep it as is. Let's keep it simple, and then we build things on top. Exactly. And that's why layer 2 is probably, even though you can upgrade layer 1s all you want, and there's ideas on how to do this, especially on Ethereum. Even so, at some point, you need layer 2. At some point, you run out of capacity on layer 1.
Otherwise, you just won't be able to compete, right? If you don't engage with those layers of abstraction, you just won't be able to compete with these layer 2 enabled networks.
That's correct. Yeah. And I think, we're already seeing that on Ethereum. Ethereum, we talked about Bitcoin, but I think if you want to see what layer 2 looks like, you have to go to Ethereum. Ethereum is today, some people might say it's blasphemy, but there's a lot of innovation and going on Ethereum right now versus Bitcoin. Bitcoin is basically, it is what it is. It's pretty static compared to Ethereum. If you go over to Ethereum, we had the DeFi, call it revolution, in 2020. And to me personally, what DeFi meant is use case. It meant real use cases for smart contract platforms. It was Ethereum's moment to shine and prove to the world that, there's a lot to this. I have seen a lot of ETH and smart contract skeptics be converted to, I wouldn't say Ethereum bulls, but at least they respect it. Chief among them, I don't know if that's the right expression, but chief among them, Arthur Hayes, legendary Bitcoin maximalist, the founder of BitMEX. He wrote a very famous piece in 2018 calling Ethereum a double-digit shitcoin.
Okay.
I remember that piece because I thought, man, this guy is so wrong. He doesn't get it. Recently, he published another blog post where he didn't apologize, but he said, I wish I would have bought ETH at the beginning. I even called it a double-digit shitcoin at the time, in an early version of this newsletter. So I'm like, hey, that's as big as an apology as I've seen. And I've seen other people go through this process where, okay, they get it. They understand that there is such a thing as programmable smart contracts that can do just about anything. There is such a thing as the notion that Bitcoin can do payments, but hey, wouldn't it be cool if we can use this technology to do all manner of things? And the answer is obviously yes. But we didn't have any proof of concept. When people said, can you prove that? Before 2020, we would say, not really, but look, there's these cool projects out there that, I think there's some value there. But with DeFi, you can say, hey, there's $115 billion in assets here, trading, staking, lending, borrowing. There's a whole thriving ecosystem here on Ethereum layer 1. Now, and then comes the problem. What happens with Ethereum? Well, it's too expensive. So it is unable, as I said, the base layer, the layer 1, is too. If you think of it as a highway, there's only 1 or 2 lanes in there, but we need 10 in order to accommodate all this demand. But we can't do that because we can't build new highways once the highway is there.
The whole city is built around it, so you can't start bulldozing skyscrapers just to make a wider highway.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how to continue that analogy, but let's just say we build a subway or whatever. We build something that runs in parallel. We're not going to expand the main roads because we all agree this is very difficult to do. Now, Ethereum intends to do this, but it's going to take 2 years. It's very uncertain. And even by the time you get there, you're going to need the subway anyway. You're going to need the airports. You're going to need all these alternative methods of transportation.
Okay, sure.
You're not going to need buses. You can't have everybody in a car.
Maybe buses is a good way to extend the analogy, because a 4 or 5 decker bus uses the same footprint on the road, but it carries 5 times as many passengers.
Perfect. Yeah,
so there we go.
exactly.
It's like that, right?
That's the whole point. Yeah, that is the whole point behind layer 2. So DeFi explodes. Now we know that Ethereum is useful, but we have a problem. We don't have enough capacity, and we cannot upgrade the roads. So what do? Okay, so we start batching transactions. The bus example is great because that is exactly what some of these technologies do. I think others are more like a subway. And we can get into those.
So it's like a parallel transportation network underground, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. That connects to the main transportation
and you can choose
network.
whether to take the bus on the road or the subway. That's kind of like a choice between base layer or special sidechain or scaling solution layer 2 type of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we want, we can go over what I think are the three main solutions for scaling.
Let's do that.
A little bit of history as to why these are the three.
Yeah, before we go there,
okay.
I just want to make it clear for the viewers here, like, so they can follow what we're talking about here. So we've got these different platforms like Bitcoin, Ethereum. They're both two separate blockchains that are both like layer ones in their own right. So when we talk about layer twos, each base layer has its own second layer solution. So we talked about BTC, Bitcoin, and then the Lightning Network is a specific layer 2 scaling solution for the Bitcoin network. And then we've got Ethereum, ETH, and you're going to talk about a few of the second layer scaling solutions specifically for Ethereum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, go for it.
Before we do that, though, I would say this technology typically can be ported over. So if you have Lightning on Bitcoin, you can have Plasma on Ethereum, which is basically the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Plasma is Lightning on Ethereum.
Right.
And I actually wanted to start with Plasma, even though it's not one of the main layer 2 solutions for Ethereum right now. It is where we come from. It's historical.
Sure.
So Plasma or Lightning. These are called payment channels. They have a major drawback, which is if I open a channel to you, I have to deposit all the money that I intend to pay up front. So this would be if I'm going to go into a bar and spend, I don't know how much I'm going to spend. Let's just say up to $100. I need to deposit the $100 in a special, let's call it escrow account.
And you get
right?
one chance.
I need to have them.
And you get one chance to figure out how much beer you're going to drink.
Exactly. So think about, so maybe what if I typically spend only $15? Well, I have to lock up 100 just in case. Because, maybe my friends show up and we're all going to be drinking more than I expected. So that's the major drawback. They're expensive. Payment channels are expensive. They require you to put up a lot of capital up front. So the Ethereum community, realizing this issue, eventually moved on from payment channels. And they basically settled on what's called a rollup. A rollup is it's the same concept as a payment channel. You're just putting a lot of transactions and batching them together and then recording that on the mainnet. So the bus example is great. Instead of each person driving their own car, you put everybody on a double-decker bus, and it takes up a lot less space. Sure. Each person is going to pay for the cost of driving that bus, but because there's maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 people in this bus, each person pays less. And this is what a rollup feels like as a user. You're using Ethereum, but it's cheaper. It's just cheaper because you're sharing that expense with everybody else who is in that batch. Yes. Let's say if a transaction costs $50, but you have 1,000 people there, each of them is paying 0.05, by 5 cents, right? Exactly. So this is the concept behind rollups. It's batching transactions, but with one major difference. You do not have to put up capital up front. Right. You don't have to do that. So it's basically you get your cake and you eat it too. Transactions are batched. There's only a summary of a number of transactions is published on the mainnet, but you do not need to lock your capital up front with anybody. Also, you can do more complex things with rollups. And this is the main difference because there's just two kinds of rollups. Again, these are just ways to batch transactions. Now, let's get into that. It may be a little, so help me navigate if I get. So
you're going to roll ups a bit. Yeah.
I'm going to go into the differences because why do we have two? Because you can say, well, rollups there's two varieties of rollup, and they both do the same thing. They both take up, they say, no, we shouldn't have everybody driving their own car. We should put everybody on a bus.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we have two? Well, because they're different. They're cryptographically different. I would try to keep the technical terms to a minimum here, but basically the main difference is we have two. One of them is called optimistic rollups. The other one, ZK rollups or zero knowledge rollups. These are two ways of batching transactions together. They're fundamentally different, though.
In the mathematics side of things, right?
In the mathematics but the user experience is different.
Okay, good.
Okay, so this is why I think we need to explain both.
That's good.
So optimistic rollups are simpler to do. You cannot fit as many people in a batch as you would with a ZK rollup, but they are simpler to do. And it's the technology is almost there. There's a mainnet for Optimism. The solution will be live July this year. So I guess the main advantage right now is that this is a short-term solution for this problem. We can have this available really quick. However, the major drawback is that when you are using optimistic rollups, you have no way of knowing if the transactions that are batched are true. There's no way to know if the person publishing these batch transactions on the Ethereum blockchain is telling the truth.
So is the bus driver honest?
Is the bus driver honest?
Right.
We do not know. Is he or she taking us to where we need to go? We have no idea. However, there's a process to contest, right? So within Optimism, because you don't know if the driver is honest or not, there's a process in place to say, hey, I think you're lying.
You're taking the long way around.
Yeah, you're taking the long way around. Here's my GPS. And it proves that, no, there's actually a quicker way to get there. But that requires what in crypto we call trust. It requires you to trust the driver implicitly. I'm going to trust him or her. And I'm going to have a process in place to contest in case this person is lying. So that's what you do. You trust, but you verify. I believe that is a quote by Vitalik. He said that on a podcast. He said, it's not you don't trust, don't verify. Oh, Martin's calling. Whatever. See, he doesn't know that I'm busy. So with blockchain, typically the motto is don't trust, verify. A blockchain is fully trustless. The breakthrough of Bitcoin is you don't have to trust anyone. You don't have to know anyone. You just know if a transaction makes it to the blockchain, that transaction is true. When you're using optimistic rollups, you do not know that. When you see a transaction being or a batch of transactions being published on the Ethereum mainnet, you do not know if these transactions are true or not. So what we have is a method. The person submitting the transactions has to leave a trace of what they did. And because they left a trace of what they did, anybody can come in and contest and say, hey, this person was lying. Here's why. I can prove it. Because going back to the bus example, I know which path the driver took. So if it's not the fastest way to get there, I can prove it. I can say, here's the fastest way. Here's what they did. So there's an issue here.
And you overcharge me.
And you have to charge me. In the case of Ethereum, you revert the transactions. The transactions up until the point where they were honest are reverted. It goes back to a previous state that is known to be correct.
So even the mere fact that there is a way to contest or verify disincentivizes the driver from being dishonest in the first place. If you know you can be caught out, then it creates a disincentive to be dishonest, or rather, it creates an incentive to be honest, whichever way you want to think about it.
Exactly. So there's some trust involved. It's a big leap, if you ask me, to go from we don't trust, we verify on layer one to we trust, but we verify. Of course, there's penalties involved. There's a lot of money at stake. You're gonna if you get caught lying, you're gonna lose money for doing that. But there's a major drawback. which is even though the system theoretically works, you have to give people enough time to contest.
Well, that's exhausting if you have to check everything, right?
You have to, exactly. So once you have the optimistic rollup in place, if you want to move, your funds will be moved, your assets will be moved to this layer 2 solution. But if you want to move them back to mainnet, hold on, you have to wait 7 days. Why do I have to wait 7 days to move my Ethereum from layer 2 to the mainnet? Well, because we don't know if what is in that layer 2 is true. So we're going to wait 7 days to see if someone can prove that someone was lying. So this trust factor slows things down very much. So yes, optimism is fast, but when you want to move your assets back to the mainnet, which you do all the time, you have to wait 7 days. Why? Because we're trusting this piece of code here. We're trusting the people running this system. We don't know if they're telling the truth. The bus driver, we don't know if he took the right path. We just don't know that. So we're going to give it 7 days for someone to come up to contest. If no one contests after 7 days, we're going to assume that the bus driver was telling the truth.
Or rather, that we assume that every one of the bus was happy with the route.
Exactly.
You had 7 days to complain, you didn't.
Exactly. You have 7 days to complain, you didn't, so we're going to assume everyone's happy, and therefore this worked.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's the major drawback that ZK rollups do away with, essentially. With a ZK rollup, the moment a batch of transactions is pushed to the Ethereum mainnet, we know it's true. Gotcha. How? Cryptography and math. We're not going to get into how, but this is the breakthrough of ZK rollups. They say, hey, we don't have to trust the bus driver. We can install a GPS on the bus itself, and if he or she is deviating, we can call them out immediately and revert immediately. So whatever is published on the Ethereum mainnet or on mainnet from a ZK rollup is known to be true.
So is there any benefit to the optimism approach, given all the drawbacks you just mentioned? Does it have any edges?
The benefit is basically that it's easier to do complex things, which is why optimism is right around the corner. It's going to come in a few months, and ZK is something that will happen in the future. The only thing we know right now to do with ZK rollups is simple payments. I can send money to you, you can send money to me. So we can do an exchange, for example, because an exchange is just people trading back and forth. So we know how to do that. And in fact, the only 2 solutions that are using ZK rollups right now are exchanges. There's one derivatives exchange and there's another spot trading exchange, because these are simple payments. We can do them. I've used both. It's fantastic. It's very cheap. You can withdraw your funds immediately. Even when fees are extremely expensive on mainnet, you push a button and you get your funds back, which is not something you can do with Optimism. If you move your funds to Optimism and you want to withdraw your money, you have to wait 7 days. If you use a ZK rollup based solution, you hit a button, you wait 30 seconds, you get your money back. You pay basically no fee. Gotcha. So it's a major advantage. But again, this is all about time. So Optimism, we know how to do. We know how to do complex applications with Optimism. We do not know how to do them with ZK rollups. We'll get there, but it may take a year or 2, or who knows.
Okay, I'm going to chalk that up to like most things in life. The best solutions take a lot more work. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not either or. We're going to probably use Optimism in the short term and then keep working on the ZK rollups.
That's exactly what the Ethereum developers are saying. Vitalik himself said that. He said, long term, ZK rollups is where it's at. But the thing is, we don't know how to do them yet. So we're going to use this thing instead. We're going to use Optimism instead. So this is where the Ethereum community has settled on. And because Ethereum is the largest and most complex and most heavily used smart contract platform, whatever they decide to do will be implemented by other smaller, call it competing smart contract platforms. Now there's a third. So these are ZK rollups, optimistic rollups. These are very interesting math-heavy ways of scaling a base layer, a layer 1. The other way is sidechains, and the concept of sidechains has been around for a while. They were proposed for Bitcoin. In fact, there's many sidechains for Bitcoin right now. A sidechain is far easier. And the way I think about them is they're very similar to optimistic rollups. You're basically transferring assets from the mainnet to a parallel blockchain that is connected in some way, connected on to the mainnet. Typically and technically, what it means is that the sidechain writes a state for itself on the mainnet. In other words, every once in a while, all the activity that took place on the sidechain is recorded on the mainnet. And therefore, if this sidechain begins to lie, if something happens in the sidechain that is not true, you can prove it because you can say that is not what you recorded on the mainnet. And that's how we can call you out. So it's very similar to optimistic rollups in the sense that you implicitly trust whatever happens on this parallel blockchain, but you can contest. The main difference is with optimism, you wait 7 days for someone to contest, to say, hey, I don't think that's true. I think these people here are lying. In the case of a sidechain, the one that we're using right now called Polygon on Ethereum, you just wait 3 hours. So you go from trusting this parallel system for 7 days to trusting them for only 3 hours. The benefits of optimistic rollups are we can do things faster and they're cheaper. Sidechains can do the same thing. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it's live right now. And so they're very similar. And the tech and the math is different, but the end results as an end user, very similar experience. It takes a while to move assets from a sidechain to the mainnet, but it doesn't take 7 days. That's ridiculous. It only takes a few hours. However, personally, I think a sidechain is probably better than optimistic rollups for the simple reason that in optimism, you don't actually, maybe I shouldn't go there because I'm not sure about this. But I think there's a lot more trust implicit on optimism than on a sidechain, because a sidechain is just another blockchain. You could turn EOS into an Ethereum sidechain, for example, today. Just write a couple smart contracts, done. And now it inherits all the security. EOS inherits all the security from Ethereum.
And you're just using the spare capacity on another blockchain, right?
Exactly. You're just using the spare capacity. So it's a very elegant solution. It's not being discussed enough, although it is more so now, because recently a lot of large decentralized finance projects, DeFi projects, have opted to move over to the Polygon sidechain. And so they're using it right now. Now, again, this needs to be emphasized. Why do people use a sidechain instead of something like a ZK rollup? Because a sidechain allows you to do just about anything. You can write just about any application on a sidechain, and we know how to do them. We do not know how to use ZK rollup technology and do a money market or a complex application like an automated market maker. These are more complex systems. We only know how to do payments using rollup technology, ZK rollup technology. So we just use a sidechain. And I'm most excited about sidechains for the simple reason that we can use them today. So anything that works today, it already exists. People are already using it. Recently, somebody noticed that the main Ethereum sidechain called Polygon is doing about as many transactions as Ethereum itself. That's a big deal. The tagline was, Polygon is already scaling Ethereum. This is not a theory. This is not something that's coming in the future. It's happening today. I've used both. I've used applications on Polygon, and I've used applications on the Ethereum mainnet, and it's night and day. It's night and day. So sidechains are, if you ask me, in the near term, they are probably the futures. Sidechains and optimism are the immediate way of scaling a smart contract platform like Ethereum. Long term, it will probably be ZK rollups, but there's going to be a lot of failures between here and there because, again, we don't know how to do them yet.
Sure.
We have theories about how to do them, but we're not there.
So is are these scaling solutions like Optimism and Sidechains, are they like, I suppose the sidechains are separate blockchains with their own tokens, but is there an Optimism token? Is there a ZK rollup token? Does it not work like that? No,
it doesn't work that way.
Just the
And that's
technology.
it's just a technology. Yeah, it's just a scaling solution. So Optimism and ZK rollups are scaling technologies. Just like Lightning for Bitcoin, there's no Lightning token.
Right.
That's another interesting thing about sidechains. You can invest in them. So as an investor, you can say, hey, I can participate in the growth of Ethereum as it becomes more scalable by buying the token that is used in that sidechain. If I believe that a lot of people will move from Ethereum mainnet to Polygon, guess what? There's a Polygon token. I can just buy that. And as more people move over, they'll need Polygon to use anything in there. And so that token will naturally rise in value if you believe that more people will be using that solution. So that is another side. You might call it a weakness from a technology standpoint. You don't want to add more tokens. But from an investment standpoint, it allows you to participate in the growth of the ecosystem. So if you're bullish on Ethereum, but you think Ethereum has a problem because it's too expensive to use, this is true, you can say, hey, I can invest in an Ethereum proxy by buying the tokens of the side chains that most people are using.
Absolutely.
And that creates opportunity for investors. And that, as a trader and investor myself, I find that to be somewhat of an advantage, because I can take exposure. I can expose my portfolio to growth in a particular sector by directly buying the thing that is going to be used in that new sector. If you're bullish on ZK rollups, sadly, there's nothing you can buy. This is like, hey, this is pretty cool, but there's no way to invest in this.
Sure. You did say there that you could invest in like Polygon token. You could do it the other way as well, which is when you're looking at a DeFi project token or so on, and if you're reading through the website and it says it uses Optimism, that might be swinging you in that direction, because having a powerful scaling solution for a decentralized app may give it the edge it needs to beat its competitors. So that's the other side of the coin, as far as I see. Yeah,
that's a good point. That is an excellent point. Yeah, if you see that this DeFi, let's say that tomorrow a new AMM, an AMM is a very popular way of doing exchanges on Ethereum. It's called Automated Market Maker,
or a swap protocol, right?
It's a swap protocol. Yeah, it's a way to swap assets. The main one right now is Uniswap. Right. Uniswap is on the Ethereum mainnet. Uniswap is very expensive to use. What if a competitor comes out and says, hey, I figured out a way to do what Uniswap does using ZK rollups? Boom, you can invest in that token. It's probably going to do very well. It will attract capital. It will attract value.
But it would be the token for the new decentralized exchange, not ZK rollups. That's just the technology.
Exactly. You're not buying the rollup directly. What you're buying is applications that use that technology. Exactly. So yes, that's an excellent point. That is another way of investing in layer 2.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so in closing then, what do you personally think viewers should pay the most attention to as things develop?
As things develop, I would pay close attention to, right now in the immediate term, I would look at Polygon. The symbol is Matic. The reason for that is right now it is becoming the most used layer 2 solution on Ethereum. Like I said, it does about as many transactions as Ethereum itself, which means this is a scaling solution that is gaining massive traction right now as we speak. The only thing I would look at going forward is, even though there's a lot of talk about rollups, there's a massive difference between ZK rollups and optimistic rollups. And from an investment point of view, since a sidechain and optimistic rollups are quite similar, I would say pay close attention to projects that are doing ZK rollups as opposed to optimistic. Pay attention to ZK rollup solutions, because those who figure out how to use this ZK rollup technology to do more complex computation will probably be the winners of the future. And we don't know who those are yet. So there's an immediate opportunity in sidechains, but long-term, pay close attention to ZK rollup development, because projects that figure out how to use this tech are going to do very well in the future.
Superb. Okay, so lots of great insights there from one of the best crypto analysts in the business, in my opinion. So Juan, thanks very much for sharing your wisdom on that topic. Myself and all viewers really appreciate you for coming on today. And that's all for this week. So keep a close eye on your inbox for next week's episode of the Wise Crypto Sunday Special. Until then, It's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.